Hi, I'm Tony, and today we're going to learn about fussy cutting and pattern matching. So, what is fussy cutting? That is whenever you have a design in a fabric that you really want to use and you want to use it in a certain way. Whether it's centered up, whether you want to use a certain part of it, it doesn't matter. If there's a certain pattern in a fabric and you really like it, you have to cut it a certain way to get that fabric to show the way that you want. What's pattern matching? Exactly that. Let's say I'm sure you have seen the pattern matching fails online where companies will have part of one thing and it looks like it's inside of the other part of it, maybe. Google the Winnie the Pooh one if you want to know what I'm talking about. It is somebody pattern matched it and it did not pattern match at all. And it's really funny. So if you don't want to have a pattern match fail, it's important that you know how to line them up in the correct way so everything lines up wonderfully. So let's get to it with some fussy cutting. First, let's take a look at English paper piecing fussy cutting. So this is a mini quilt that I made with the pattern that I have, Settlers. It is a inspiration of tabletop gaming. So each of these squares is supposed to represent a type of material from tabletop gaming. So you have, of course, some bricks, you have some wheat, you have some sheep, and you have other things. Well, I needed to get these in certain places. So these trees and these sheeps I had to fussy cut in order to get into this quilt. So here's how I did it. I found this amazing sheep fabric. It is by Quilting Treasures. I don't know if you can still get it anymore, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And as you see, our little sheep right here is from our little sheep right here. So this is how I fussy cut it. First step, you want to figure out if you can fussy cut, if I can use any of these other sheep that are around it. Okay, so if I'm going to use it just like that, oh, I could possibly use that sheep, but I don't think I could use that sheep because you see how it doesn't quite match and go over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to decide my orientation of my sheep. Oh, I forgot to mention, these are clear plastic English paper piecing templates. The line right here on the inside is what you can see. So whenever I push this down, I can see that inside line is exactly what my pattern is going to be. This is, for my English paper piecing, this is a 3/8 of a seam. So I take this and I fold it under. My paper is this exact size, and I want to just lay it like down. So if you're using these templates, I highly recommend them. This specific one is from Paper Pieces, although you can get them in many different places. The acrylic templates are wonderful for English paper piecing. So what I want to do is, like I said, figure out my orientation, because that is important. So I look at my pattern and I see, oh, my sheep have the point at the very top. All right, so whenever I lay this down, my sheep, my point, is at the very top. Now you notice how the sheep that I did in here, it was important for me for the sheep itself to be centered and not the fence. So I cut off the little fence pole over here. So because you see here, and the fence is not going to fit within, and if I do, you see how my sheep is off center compared to what I have in the block. So at this point I need to make a decision. Do I want my sheep centered or the fence centered? I want my sheep centered. So I'm going to move it over just like that. And I'm going to lay it down how exactly I want it. And then I'm going to draw. Now, depending upon your design, you could always do it from the front or you could do it from the back. And let's go ahead and make this line a little bit darker. And then at this point, I'm just going to take my scissors, and these are amazing scissors that I got from Famore. They have the soft grip, so no matter how much I am cutting, my hands are not getting sore. All right, so let's cut this out all the way down. Perfect. And there we are. And there is my sheep. So now, whenever I take my sheep and I put it on the paper, it's going to look like that. And the same thing goes for other shapes for English paper piecing. I highly suggest you use acrylic templates for them because it makes it so much easier. And I've got the acrylic template linked down below. Okay, let's take a look at fussy cutting for quilt blocks. So I have this really cute dog fabric. I've got about a quarter yard, and I want to use this dog fabric to create a cute little tiny dog square quilt. The problem is these dogs are all facing in different directions. So I want my dogs lined up in a cute little row of squares. So I need to fussy cut this to make sure my squares line up correctly and I turn the dogs the correct way. There are two ways to do this. The first way is using templates, acrylic templates. Yay, acrylic templates. This particular one is from Eagle's Wings Quilts, which is another paper piecing company here in Canada. Paper Pieces in the States is the one I recommend in the States, and Eagle's Wings is what I recommend here in Canada. This acrylic template is a 1/4 inch template. Unlike what we just did with the English paper piecing. The English paper piecing one is a 3/8 of a seam. It is important if you're using it for quilting and not English paper piecing, it has to be a 1/4 inch. Now Paper Pieces also sells these with a 1/4 inch on there, so it doesn't make a difference which company you use. So make sure it is a 1/4 inch. That is the most important thing. So with our template, I am going to pick a dog. Let's see, I have to make sure my dog is nice and straight. Oh, I can't use this Scotty. And it would help if you could see why. I can't use the Scotty because you see this acrylic template is off my fabric. That is going to mess with my seam, so I cannot use it. If I were to say, it's fine, I'm going to use this anyways, it may peel away at the seam because there's not enough fabric in order to grab it and hold it together. So be mindful as you're picking it. Just like I can't pick this poor little Pomeranian because it goes into the selvage, and I would see some of the selvage. So let's pick our first dog that I can, I could use this boxer. Look at that. Or is that I don't know what that, oh, he's so cute. I love this dog so much. Okay, so same exact thing of what we just did with the paper pieces. I'm just going to draw around this dog, and there we are. And there is my square that I can then cut out. Now the nice thing about this is I can then take my piece and I can center up the next one. Now I cannot use this happy little guy because he is blending into this guy right here. So I cannot, so I would have to do that and see how it's overlapping this one. So I'd have to move it over. Oh, I can use this Yorkie. So make sure you line it up and it's not going into the selvage and he's not going into this guy here. You can see the pencil marks. So if I want to use this Yorkie, I can do that just like that. Now, and then use my scissors to cut it out. Now, this is the easier method for doing it. It is also the most time consuming because you're taking your time to draw and then cut it out with scissors. If you want to be a little bit quicker, the second method is using your rotary cutter and cutting it just like regular quilt blocks. Now, there are lots of different templates. There's lots of different cutting things that you can use in order to cut your pieces out. There are specialty cutting tools on the market just for fussy cutting. I just kind of do the math in my head and figure it out. So let's turn this guy around. And let's say I want this guy right here. So the same guy that I just did on the other side. And this guy right here. So let's say, let me go ahead and find a square. Now, if I want to make him a 1 inch, so remember this one was 1 3/4 inch. That means that my finished square is going to be 1 1/4. Let's say if I want to make it 1 1/2 inches. So what I would do is take my little guy and make sure that I'm going to use my lines right here. So this line right here and this line right here is going to make it an inch. Oops, sorry. covered the camera, is going to make it 1.5 inches because my line here to my line here is a 1/2 inch. So my line here to here is 1 inch. So that to here, so 1/4 inch plus 1/4 inch on each side is 1.5 inches. So now I can cut here and here. So I'm cutting a 3.5 inch block to make it, no, that is 2.5. I apologize. I am cutting it a 2.5 inch to make it a 2. Well, that doesn't make sense. All right, hold on. I did it. Oh, it's this one. I counted wrong. It's this one to this 3. So that'd be a 3. That's a 2 inch between here and here. So that 2 inches minus a 1/4 inch seam on each side is going to give me a 1.5 inch block. So let's do that. So let's cut this 3 inch right here. And then I'm going to cut my 1 inch right there. And then I'm going to turn this guy right here. Now I am going to go ahead and just snip this right here because I've already cut through those, so I can't really use those guys. And yes, this technique uses a lot of waste. Okay, so let's take a look at my guy right here. Oh, he's so cute. He is so adorable. Look at him. So he's going to be squared up that way. So let's turn him here. And let's do a, oops, this way. And let's cut him a 2 inch this way. So now in this case, I'm treating it just like any other block, where I'm lining the 2 up here and I'm lining that up there. And trim it off. And there's my block. Now, I probably could have turned him a little bit better. Now, if I cut the 1/4 inch here, so if we do a 1/4 inch there and a 1/4 inch there, you can see what the block is going to be. And there's my fussy cut little guy. So that's how you fussy cut with quilting. 2 different ways, acrylic templates or figuring out the math with here. Obviously, like I said, acrylic templates is a lot easier because you don't have to worry about any math. You can look in the little window and there it is. Now for everyone's favorite topic and the hardest thing that everyone thinks can be done, pattern matching. Remember, you don't want those pattern match fails. I've done them, I've seen them. I could spend hours on the internet just looking at all of them and laughing. So here's what we do. Let's say if we have this strip of fabric, it doesn't make a difference if this is for a piece of clothing, a quilt, or whatever it is. But I have this seam here, and the next fabric I'm going to be sewing to it. I have to match this pattern here, and I want it to seem like it's one endless part of fabric. So what I would need to do is first decide what is my seam allowance. In this case, my seam allowance is going to be a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and put a 1/4 inch on my ruler. So I'm measuring a 1/4 inch in, and then I'm going to roll it. Now, I'm not using my pencil because this is black fabric. I'm using a chalk pencil. So I'm drawing my 1/4 inch all the way down. Now, and that's going to be my sew line, okay? Now, that's important. I've got it on the front, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the back. So I want to be able to see it while I'm sewing it and while I'm matching it up. So let's bring this all the way down. There's our 1/4 inch. So we have our 1/4 inch on the back, and we have our 1/4 inch on the front. So now comes the fun part. Let's actually do some matching up. So I have my piece of fabric that I'm going to be matching up, and it is ironed. That's my seam that's ironed down on the other side. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to find where in my fabric this lines up. It's important your secondary piece that you're lining up is your full piece of fabric. Don't cut this to the size that you need yet. Figure out your pattern matching first and then figure it out, and then figure the rest out. Okay? So we're going to pattern match this. I discovered here I have the purple, pink, blue. So this area here matches up. So I'm going to take my piece of fabric and I'm going to lay it down so that everything lines up. There we go. Now, you see how it's nicely lined up in there? So I'm going to take my acrylic ruler. I'm going to lay it down, making sure that I'm just covering my fabric. Okay, so you see my fabric right here. It's kind of hard to see. My fabric right there. I'm taking my acrylic ruler and I'm only covering the very edge of this. So the edge of the ruler is lining up with the edge of this fabric here. Okay, so I'm lining that up here and lining it up right there. Okay, now I'm going to take my chalk pencil again because that's what I did on the front. Let's make sure I have enough chalk in here. And I drew my line so that now when I take this away, you see my line. Now this is my sew line again, because remember my sew line for that one needs to match up with my sew line for this one. So my sew lines need to match up. So this means I need to cut a 1/4 inch on the other side. So at this point, I'm going to take my fabric, I'm going to turn it over. This all is going to be waste. So everything to the right of this line is waste that I am not using. Fussy cutting and pattern matching uses a lot of extra fabric and extra waste. So if you are pattern matching and fussy cutting, please, please, please do not be upset at how much you're wasting. Set it aside and use it as scrap for something else. It is the cost we pay to have things line up correctly. Okay, and then now, there we are. So that is now scrap. All right, so now I have my fabric. I need to cut it the size that I want. And this fabric I have is 15 inches by 21 and a half inches. Okay, so let's cut our 15, because this is 15 included. No, hold on. Wait, it is, I'm sorry, it is 5 inches. Okay, so let's cut our 5 inches. So let's say if I want let's say if I wanted this piece of fabric to match this piece of fabric for the exact size. So I need to cut my 5 inches. Now, you notice how I'm not measuring it from my sew line because I've included the seam allowance in my cutting. Okay, let me move this down because I don't have a super long ruler for this. There we are. Okay, and then this is my extra fabric. So here's the thing that throws off a lot of people. I have my width. Okay, that's exactly what I need. Now my length. Remember I said I needed 15 inches for the length? I can't just cut 15 inches. I have to make sure it's going to match up where I need it matched up. So what I do is I like to draw marks. So let's line this up again for the length. Beautiful. And then I'm going to take this here and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to come down here and do the same thing. What I find interesting, it's on an angle. So this design on this print is not printed perfectly straight. And you'll find that a lot on prints. Unfortunately, the printers aren't able to keep it as straight as you would hope. So in this case, Here we are. We have that one. And then let's cut this off here. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to re-iron this open. Okay, so we're going to re-iron this one open, and then I will show you how we line this up for sewing. Here are my two pieces that we're going to be sewing together. So I have a perfect 1/4 inch that I have drawn on each side, and I'm going to flip this over. All right, so let's go ahead and line this up. Remember, I have cut this, so if I flip this over and I line my top up and I line my bottom up, I should have it. Now, here's how you check it to make sure this is correct. Now, remember, pattern matching is a lot of work. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put my pins in just inside that 1/4 inch line that I drew. So I'm putting my pins in like this. Normally, when I put pins in, I put them like this, but I'm going to be sewing this direction, so I'm putting them in the direction of my sewing. Okay, and let's go all the way down. Always check your fussy cutting before you sew. So that's what we're doing here. So now I'm going to open this up. And there's my pattern matching. So you will actually be able to see it a little better after I have sewn it. But if you check it, you see how that lines up nicely? I'm pulling it open, that's why you can see that. All right, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to sew this, and I'm going to sew along this line that I drew. I'm making sure that I'm sewing on that line exactly. And then that is what I'm going to open up after I iron and then see that this works. Moment of truth. Let's see if this works. All right. So I have not cheated and looked to make sure it matched. I literally just picked it up and brought it over from the sewing machine. Oh yeah, that's nice. Now the skull there's a little bit off, but it's good. It's good. You can't tell unless you really look closely that I was off by a little bit at the very top. But look at that skull right there. Now you notice I do have a little bit of a chalk line. That's why I use chalk. It washes right out. So after I finish with this, I would wash it out and take care of it. And that, two separate pieces, is how you pattern match. And that's pattern matching and fussy cutting. Hopefully you learned something today. Pattern matching and fussy cutting. Don't forget to like this video, follow my YouTube as well as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and don't forget about Twitch, where you can actually interact and sew with me as I'm sewing live.